Have you ever asked a question maybe and just didn't get the answer you were hoping for? Or,
Wow.
you felt the conversation just sort of shut down and you weren't really sure why it happened?
Yeah, that can be awkward.
What if the way we ask questions fundamentally shapes the world around us, even maybe who we become?
Welcome. You're listening to Crystal Clear English Podcast. Learn English the crystal clear way. Your shortcut to being well-informed. We try to give you those surprising facts, maybe a bit of humor, just enough to keep you hooked.
Absolutely.
And today, we're embarking on this really fascinating exploration into something we don't often think about. The art of asking questions.
Right.
It's way more than just, grammar. It's really about the subtle psychology, connection, influence, and actually getting the results you want.
So our mission today really is to unpack these subtle but honestly powerful ways we can transform our communication. Just by mastering how we ask things, we'll explore how tiny shifts in language can turn what sounds like an order into a polite request.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And how to frame your opinions diplomatically so you actually invite discussion instead of just stating facts. And we'll even uncover some common traps, things to avoid. Get ready for some really eye-opening insights, I think.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Think about a toddler for a second.
Okay.
They wander around, right, pointing at everything, constantly asking, what's that? It's pure questioning.
It really is.
Driven by curiosity, wanting to connect, needing that knowledge.
And what's so fascinating there with the toddler is that the beauty is often in the question itself, not always the answer they get back.
That's true.
It kind of echoes, the wisdom of Voltaire, the French philosopher. He famously said, "Judge a man by his questions." It suggests that how we inquire, the way we ask, reveals so much about our own minds, our intentions.
That's that shift from just being curious to chasing answers. That's
Right.
quite profound. It makes you think about what we might lose as we go through, like structured education.
Right.
Because here's where it gets really interesting, I think. As we grow up, especially in school, our focus shifts, doesn't it? From asking questions
Yeah.
to chasing the correct answer,
Right.
especially on exams.
Oh, definitely. The pressure for the right answer.
The question itself just stops being questioned, it becomes this fixed thing set by someone else.
Exactly. And if we connect that to the bigger picture, this adult tendency, this habit of seeking one single absolute correct answer, well, it isn't always that helpful in real life, is it?
Not really, no. Life's messy.
It is.
Yeah.
We lose that wonderful childlike curiosity. But questions of discovery, things like, how did it feel when that happened? Or what do you truly feel about that? Those are so powerful because they forge real connection. They help us empathize, truly understand why things are the way they are. It boils down to that idea of ask more and tell less.
Ask more, tell less. I like that. So, okay, questions are clearly powerful tools for discovery, for connection. But if they're so fundamental, how do we actually craft them? Not just to get info, but to foster real engagement, get certain outcomes, especially when politeness is absolutely key.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah, because, many of us use phrases all the time, probably without even realizing it, that sound more like an order than a request. Like saying, can you give me that bottle of water?
That is a perfect example. When you say, can you, what you're implicitly doing is questioning the other person's ability. Or maybe their permission to do the action. And that can sometimes create this subtle power dynamic.
Right. Like, are you able to lift it?
Exactly. Or are you allowed to hand it to me?
Yeah.
It can feel a bit like a directive, not a request.
Okay.
So a really simple but highly effective change is just to replace can with could.
Just could.
Just could. It shifts the whole frame. It becomes more hypothetical, opens up a more collaborative space rather than just issuing an order.
Makes sense.
So for instance, instead of, excuse me, can you help me pick this up? Excuse me, could you help me pick this up?
Okay.
It instantly transforms it. It becomes a polite request,
Right.
invites cooperation, and makes it, frankly, much more likely you'll get a positive response.
Yeah, I can see that.
Same with, pardon me, could you give me a hand? Or could you explain this to me? It just has that softer, more invitational tone.
Okay, so could is good. What else?
Well, building on that, would is another incredibly polite way to phrase things.
Would. Okay.
Like, would you like a hand with the wash? Or maybe, would you mind if I sat there? It clearly communicates you're asking about their preference or asking for consideration. It's definitely not a demand.
Right.
And then, of course, there's the simple powerhouse.
Please.
Can't forget please.
Never. Just putting please at the end of a question. Like, could you fill this form, please? Or may I have more soup, please? It makes it undeniably a request.
Yeah, it signals respect. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And most people respond really positively to that clear signal. And then for even more formality,
Oh, okay.
may is excellent. Now, may is classically used for asking for permission, right? May I come in? Whereas can often relates more to capability. So technically, can I help you asks about my ability to help.
Ah, interesting distinction.
But may I help you feels more like a direct offer of assistance. It focuses on the request itself, not the helper's capability. So it often comes across as inherently more polite, more service-oriented.
Wow. Okay. So can, could, would, please, may. Lots of options depending on the situation.
Exactly. They give you precise control over how your question lands.
So those are fantastic for making polite requests. But what about those times when we accidentally sound like we're giving an order, even if we totally don't mean to, like at work saying, send me the report?
Oh, yeah, that's a really common one. Even if you are the manager, you have the authority, a direct order, like send me the report or switch off your phone. It can sound quite abrupt.
A bit harsh, yeah.
A bit harsh, especially to many English speakers. The simple trick, again, is to add could you please right at the beginning.
Ah, combine them.
Combine them. Could you please send me the report? Could you please switch off your phone?
Okay.
It just makes it go so much more smoothly. It softens the command, shows respect, and you're far more likely to get the cooperation you want without any friction.
That's really practical.
It works anywhere, really.
Yeah.
Formal, informal. Just fosters that sense of mutual respect.
That's a super actionable tip. Okay, now, let's take this maybe a step further. We've learned how to turn commands into polite questions. Good start. But how can we take a question that already exists and just make it better, more effective? Or thinking about opinions, how do we express our opinions in a way that actually invites discussion rather than potentially shutting it down?
Excellent point. Let's take an existing question structure.
Yeah.
Grammatically, saying, do you want a taxi? Is perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with it.
Right. Standard question.
But if you want a softer, kinder, definitely more polite approach, especially when you're offering something, replace do you want with would you like?
Ah, back to would.
Back to would.
Oh.
So, would you like a taxi? Or would you like to meet at 3?
Okay.
It conveys the exact same core meaning, but it elevates your language quite significantly. It focuses on their preference. It shows courtesy.
So you sound more considerate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You'll always be perceived as a more considerate communicator. And this applies to stating your own desires, too. Instead of saying, I want to order, try, I'd like to order. Again, just that softer, more inviting tone.
Little changes, big difference.
Oh.
Okay, but what about opinions then? That can be tricky.
Right. This is where it gets really diplomatic and quite smart, actually.
Yeah.
Especially in professional settings or sensitive conversations.
Okay.
Let's say your opinion is the price is too high.
Okay. Pretty direct.
Very direct.
Yeah.
And potentially confrontational, right? Instead of stating it directly, frame it as a question. Do you think the price is too high? Or maybe, do you think he should accept the job?
Ah, I see. You're putting your opinion inside a question.
Exactly. You embed your opinion, but you phrase it as an inquiry. This allows the other person to feel like they're participating in the discussion, like they're making their own decision or evaluation.
So you're not just telling them.
They're not telling them.
Yeah.
You plant the idea, you sort of guide the conversation gently, but they feel empowered, they feel heard, and they're much more likely to consider your viewpoint, maybe even come around to your side.
That's clever.
It's an incredible strategy, really, for building consensus and getting cooperation without being pushy.
Okay, so let's quickly recap those transformations because they seem really powerful. We've got could you please for softening commands, would you like, for making offers or preferences sound much better.
Yeah, more polite.
And do you think? For sharing your opinions diplomatically, inviting collaboration.
Spot on.
It really shows how just a few words can shift the entire dynamic of a conversation.
It truly can. Yep. Language is subtle.
Okay, so we've talked about good questions, better questions, even the best questions for certain situations.
Yeah.
But what about the bad questions?
Ah, yes, the pitfalls.
Yeah, the ones that are maybe traps or the ones that actually shut down communication before it even gets going.
That's a really important distinction to make because, some questions aren't really questions at all.
What do you mean?
They're actually statements just disguised as questions, often reflecting an emotional state or maybe pushing an agenda.
Okay, example.
The classic, perhaps slightly cliche example is a loaded question like, does this outfit make me look bad?
Ah, the dangerous question.
Exactly. That person isn't truly seeking objective fashion advice, usually.
Probably not.
It's more likely a statement reflecting their own emotional vulnerability, maybe insecurity. It's a social trap.
And you should probably sidestep it carefully.
Very carefully, yeah.
Okay, so that's one type of bad question. What else?
Well, think about why that question is a trap. It often presents a simple binary choice, yes or no.
Right. It forces you into one of two boxes.
Precisely. But life, as we said, is rarely that simple. It's rarely just yes or no. Consider a more mundane example. Should we go to the cinema on Friday?
Okay.
You might initially say yes, but then the real question comes later, doesn't it? Okay, what's actually playing?
Right. And the answer to that might change your first yes.
Exactly. Often, that second, more complete question makes you rethink your initial quick answer. So, yes-no questions frequently hide a whole lot of complexity. They oversimplify things that are actually far more nuanced.
And a yes could mean anything.
Totally. It could mean yes, absolutely. Or it could mean, yeah, I guess. If you really want to, you don't get the true picture.
Okay, so avoid questions that are really statements and be wary of yes-no questions. Any other pitfalls?
Another subtle one is how we can inadvertently close down dialogue, even when we think we're asking a question. Think about this contrast. Asking your child, how was school today? That's open, right? It's curiosity-driven. It invites a detailed story.
Yeah, you might get anything back.
You might. But what if you say, I bet maths was good today?
Different feel.
Completely different.
Yeah.
You shifted from asking a question to making a statement about what you expect or want to hear. You've kind of told your child the answer you're looking for. And you've potentially shut down the real conversation about how their day actually went. Maybe maths was terrible.
Right. They might not feel they can say that now.
Exactly. This comes back to that principle again. Ask more and tell less. It's about keeping those pathways of dialogue open and genuinely inviting the other person's perspective.
That's a really powerful reminder. So it's not just about being polite, is it? It's also about the underlying intention, the structure of the question itself.
Absolutely.
We need to sort of unlearn that desire for just one single correct answer we get from school, and definitely not blindly trust a simple yes-no question.
You got it. Think deeper about the question itself.
Wow. Okay, you've just heard some incredible insights, I think, into this subtle but really profound art of asking questions. But look, this is just one exploration, one deep dive into the vast ocean of knowledge we love exploring here.
Just scratching the surface.
Exactly. So if you're finding these insights valuable, if you want to keep discovering more of these surprising facts and those aha moments that help you feel genuinely well-informed, we've got so much more amazing stuff we want to share with you.
Definitely stick around. Now, ultimately, I think the true art of asking questions, it really does come back to that childlike curiosity we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, that pure why.
That pure why.
Yeah.
Keep exploring. Keep asking questions, not just for information, but to genuinely connect with your community, with the world around you, to deepen your empathy for others. But above all, maybe the biggest takeaway is this. For every question you hear someone else ask, take a moment and ask yourself, what does that question say about the person who is asking it?
Turn it back on the asker.
Yeah, because that's often where the real understanding begins. Understanding them and maybe even understanding yourself a bit better, too.
What an illuminating exploration,
Yeah.
seriously, into the art of asking questions. We've learned, I think, that really small changes in our language can have just a tremendous impact on our communication, definitely our relationships, and the results we get.
Absolutely. It's about awareness.
Yeah. From transforming those commands with "could you please" to elevating our opinions using "do you think," and just understanding the hidden traps like those binary questions, the power is truly in your hands to shape your interactions.
It really is. Okay, well, that wraps up our deep dive for today. Thanks so much for joining us on the Crystal Clear English podcast.
Yeah, thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe for more great content.
We'll leave you with this quote. Learning another language is like becoming another person.